I set the last sliver of steel into the miniature tower at 2:41 a.m. The piece clicked, a clean metallic whisper that told me Whitaker Square finally held its shape. My hands were steady, steadier than they were 12 hours ago, before the boardroom storm I knew was coming. The basement smelled like cold glue and sawdust. Awards lined the walls, but they were just shadows of other nights like this. 22 years in the craft had taught me two things: precision buys silence, and silence buys time. I needed both. The wall clock ticked too loudly. I killed the sound with a towel and opened my laptop. The tracking panel bloomed to life, breadcrumb dots across downtown. I zoomed in on the Langford Hotel, top floors washed in midnight gold. Room 1413. Same as last week. Same as most weeks across 8 months of quiet suspicion. Patterns don't lie. People do. I wasn't angry. Anger wastes breath. I collected facts and kept my breathing even, the way they drilled into us in the unit before I ever touched an architectural brief. Intelligence first. Demolition only when needed. The model waited on the table, bright under the lamp. The Eastern Support node looked unassuming in balsa and brass. On paper, it cut material by 24%. In practice, it did something else, something only I knew how to control. I let that thought pass. Not tonight. Upstairs, floorboard side. Lauren moved like a ghost lately. 11 years of marriage can turn a voice into a weather report. Noticed, then ignored. We used to meet in the middle of nights like this. Now she lingered at doorways, robe tied like a ceasefire flag. I kept my eyes on the model and waited for her steps to fade. Almost done, I said to no one in particular. It sounded true. Whitaker Urban Group called me a senior architect, which was a polite way to say 14 years of keeping their skyline from collapsing and their press releases shiny. Graham Whitaker, my father-in-law, liked clean headlines more than clean load paths. His new favorite, Tyler Cross, liked being photographed at ribbon cuttings he didn't earn. I liked none of that. I liked things that stood when the ground moved. I checked the tracker again. Room 1413 stayed lit. The call log on my phone showed nothing from her tonight. It hadn't, not for a while. Absence is also data. I lifted the model and walked it through the mental presentation. Lobby flow, solar angles, the calm seam where public space folded into green terraces. Beauty is easy to sell. Integrity is harder. I had both, and that used to be enough. I scrolled to the dormant files I kept under boring names. One folder carried the bones of my other life. Back then I answered to numbers, not names. We learned to design places that had secrets in plain geometry, rooms that looked like storage and listened like satellites. Architecture teaches patience. Intelligence teaches consequence. 8 months ago, the first breadcrumb appeared on the Langford map. I didn't confront Lauren. I measured instead. Times, durations, returns, excuses. 3 hours became 3.5. Dinners became strategy sessions. I logged every change and treated it like stress data in concrete. Cracks start hairline thin. Then they grow. I saved the tracker, closed the laptop, and breathed out. The workshop fell into a thick quiet, the kind you can fold and pocket. I slid the towel away from the clock and let it tick again. A metronome, not a threat. Tomorrow I would carry Whitaker Square through the lobby like any proud company man. Security would nod. Reception would smile. Graham would pretend to study the structure, and Tyler would question the part he didn't understand. They'd think they were testing me. They were only confirming a schedule. I turned off the lamp and watched the tower's silhouette hold itself together in the dark. Structures outlive their makers. If you design them right, they outlive their betrayers too. Room 1413 stayed lit on the screen beside the lamp. I closed it without another look. I wasn't building a scene for tomorrow. I was building a record. When records are complete, decisions make themselves. I locked the basement door, counted to 5, and listened to the house answer. It sounded hollow. That was useful. Empty spaces are easier to reframe. I carried the model through the Whitaker lobby like it was just another Tuesday. Security nodded the way they always did. I remembered their kids' names. They remembered I never forgot. That mattered more to me than any plaque on a wall. The elevator rose like a held breath. On 12, The carpet swallowed my steps. Glass, chrome, and a conference table long enough to land a drone. Graham Whitaker sat at the head, eyes narrow, smile polite. Tyler Cross leaned back with a tablet and the kind of confidence that grows in good light. I set Whitaker square in the center and pulled the cover. The room shifted forward a few inches. I walked them through sight lines, energy recovery, and the way people would flow from street to terrace without feeling the grade. Beauty first, then the bone. The eastern node is the key, I said. It reduces material by 24% while raising stability. For independent engineers, verify the math. The margins absorb lateral shocks without carrying extra weight. Tyler flicked his eyes at Graham. Traditional framing saves costs. Why fix what works? Because what works fails when the ground argues back. I kept that line in my head. Out loud, I stayed calm. Traditional framing pushes force where this side is weakest. The node moves it before it becomes a problem. Graham waved his hand like he was brushing sawdust I tracked in. We aren't a lab, Ethan. We build for profit, not experiments. I let the silence hang. They read silence as consent. It was actually measurement. Who blinks, who checks their watch, who smiles when a thing they didn't understand gets called risky. I closed the lid on the model and thanked everyone for their time. Polite, precise, unmoved. In my office, Jenna Park was waiting with that look people get when the floor shifts and no one else hears it. They booked HR, 3rd floor. 1 hour, she said softly. Back up my personal design files, I said. Also the other folder. Already done, she said, and slid an external drive across the desk. And I mirrored the 4-year record you told me to compile. Change orders. Permit edits. Substitutions. Good. Patterns don't shout. They whisper until you put them together. HR's conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and fear. Graham sat with his shoulders squared. Tyler scrolled like he was bored of real life. An HR rep whose name I didn't catch read from a paper. We're letting you go for performance issues. Effective today. I looked at the envelope on the table. Thick paper, thin story. Performance, I repeated. The word tasted like chalk. The company's direction is changing, Tyler added. Your approach is dated. I nodded as if they'd shared a weather report. My pulse stayed even. One question, I said, and kept my voice flat. When did my marriage become dated too? Tyler glanced up. Graham's jaw tightened. The rep blinked and kept staring at the script like it would save him. That's a personal matter, Graham said. This is a professional separation. Hard to separate things you braided for years, I said. Then I stood, buttoned my jacket, and left the envelope where it lay. They could keep the paper. I kept the plan. In the hallway, I heard Tyler whisper that I took it better than expected. People project their limits onto you. It keeps them comfortable. Comfort is how buildings fail. Back at my office, Jenna had boxed what mattered and nothing else. They're releasing me too, she said. Restructuring. Perfect timing, I said. For what? She asked because she's loyal, not because she was afraid. For a redesign, I said. Something more permanent than Whitaker Square. We walked past reception together. I carried the model. She carried a single plant and the drive in her pocket. Security watched us go. One of them gave me that small, private nod men reserved for moments when words are an insult. Outside, the air had that bright, brittle shine cities get after rain. I set the model in the passenger seat and let the engine idle. My phone buzzed with 3 new emails, exit formalities, NDA reminders, a survey asking about my off-boarding experience. I archived all 3 without opening them. Tyler's Mercedes sat near Graham's Bentley like a silver understudy waiting for the lead to cough. I mapped my next hours the way I map a load path. Clean. Sequential. No wasted motion. At a red light, I pictured the boardroom again. The way Graham avoided the model when the lid was off. The way Tyler loved the camera lens even when none were around. Men tell you who they are in rooms that pretend to be neutral. You only have to listen. Jenna texted once. Files secure. Offsite copy seated. I replied with a single dot. Confirmation without noise. The rest of the day would need quiet. I drove without music. A plan is a structure. Every step bears weight for the one after it. Remove a piece, and the wrong thing carries stress. That's how failures start. That's how you design them too. They fired me for performance at noon. By sunset, the tallest piece of their brand would start telling the truth. Security watched me cross the lobby with the model and a cardboard banker's box. One guard gave me that small nod men trade when rules have turned against you. He whispered that this wasn't right. He was correct, just late. Home sat clean against the street like a knife. Flat planes, warm cedar, glass that caught evening light. I designed it the year Graham decided I was useful. Back then, I thought foundations were forever. Pretty lies look best in daylight. Inside, the air smelled like new laundry and lemon oil. Lauren had already opened my closet. 2 suitcases lay on the bed, half full, zippers open like mouths. She packed with the calm of someone rehearsed. Her silk robe hung the way a ceasefire flag sags in windless air. I set the box down and waited. Silence tells you more than speeches. She placed folded shirts in a row and finally looked up. "It's better for everyone," she said. "A clean break." I let the words pass. "You called HR before breakfast," I said. "You called a shelter after lunch." She had left a brochure on my nightstand. Blue cover, careful smiles, a hotline in bold type. "There's severance," she said. "Use it until you find something else." And Graham mentioned your non-compete. "Unenforceable in this state," I said. "And I never forfeited my military pension. Assumptions are stress fractures. Fine until they aren't." She faltered. "Who are you, Ethan?" "The same man you married," I said, minus the blind spots. I closed the suitcases and stood them upright. 11 years fit easier than I expected. "Don't bother changing the locks," I added. "I won't be back." "Where will you go?" "To finish what I started 14 years ago." I didn't explain. Clarity isn't kindness when the ground is moving. I carried the model like a second pulse and left the house with the light still on. The door clicked, a clean mechanical truth after a long week of soft lies. Out on the street, the air was crisp, the sun already dropping behind a line of roofs I didn't design. I set the model in the passenger seat and drove without music. Across town, the building was nothing special. Brick, old elevator, a hallway that held the smell of dust and varnish. The lease sat under my first name, Blake Ethan Calder, filed more than 4 years ago, paid by a trust no one at WG ever saw. Contingencies look paranoid until they look necessary. Inside, the apartment was quiet and spare. No framed art. No plants. Just a table, 2 chairs, a shelf of binders that wore boring labels, and a wall Jenna and I had turned into a map. Photos, permits, invoices, thread. Lines linked Graham's shortcuts to his headlines, Tyler's charm to his signatures, substitutions to weekly profit calls. One page told you nothing. All of them together told you how a city breathes, and where to press if you wanted to gasp. Jenna stood from the desk before I could speak. She'd used the key I gave her months ago and the order of tasks we'd agreed on without ever saying it out loud. "Everything's ready," she said. That was 90% of our dialogue most days. I placed Whitaker Square on the table. The model looked different under this light. Less promise, more leverage. I powered the laptop and opened a panel with gray tabs and friendly names. Beneath each sat something that wasn't friendly at all. Operation Backdraft waited behind a password I could enter in the dark. The script didn't shout. It clicked through transfers, peeled savings off visible accounts, and walked them through shells and custodians faster than any banker could find a phone. I watched balances step across borders like they were crossing a street. Predictable, quiet, done. A second window confirmed that the off-site archive Jenna seeded hours earlier was alive in 4 places, each boring, each safe. Change orders. Concrete certifications. Supplier swaps. The city's paper trail looked clean until you held it up to the right light. I checked the tracker out of habit. The Langford still glowed. Room 1413 kept its square of warm gold. I logged the time and closed the feed. When records are complete, decisions don't argue. Jenna handed me a short stack, new IDs, a company binder for Nova Arc development, a business card with a number only a few people in the world still answered. I didn't call it. Not yet. Timing is load management. If you rush, the wrong member takes the weight. I walked the perimeter of the room, slow, one hand on the wall. Behind the drywall sat a second grid I'd built myself. Conduit, fiber, things that let a space see without being seen. The apartment looked like a spare studio. It was a frame for something else. Outside, a siren faded into distance. The city adjusted to evening. I checked the clock and set an alarm I wouldn't need. Tomorrow could keep its schedule. Tonight belonged to preparation. I turned off the overhead and let the map take the light. Lines glowed pale against pinned paper. Graham's empire had always been decorative. Decoration is the first thing smoke hides. Below my feet, there was a door the lease didn't mention. The door under my floor opened on a hinge I machined myself. The room below hummed like its own weather. Cool, dry air, a low electric murmur, and light that never flickered. Racks lined one wall, the other was all screens. Whitaker Tower sat on the center display, skeleton overlaid on city grid, every sensor mapped like nerves. I keyed the system in and watched the feeds wake. Elevator logs, card swipes, maintenance cameras Graham never paid for, but used anyway. When you design the frame, you decide where the sightlines live. I built mine to look patient. Jenna came down behind me, soft footfalls, coffee in a thermos she didn't offer because I never took it this late. She opened the operations binder to the tab marked Backdraft and read off the checklist. Transfers, complete. Offsite mirrors, alive. Legal archive, sealed. Public channels, quiet. Quiet is the part amateurs skip. A secure handset blinked on the desk. I routed it through the voice scrubber and answered. Phase 1 complete, Marco Hayes said. Whitaker Tower's security stack is open. We have eyes. Good, I said. The handset clicked down. We don't waste words when the ground matters. On another screen, I loaded the model that predicted human behavior better than any brochure. It wasn't magic. It was time-of-day patterns, pride curves, and how fast a man like Graham would move when reputation bled. The counter said 1 week of silence would yield 108 calls between Lauren and her father. I tagged the number and let the script arm the log. Records decide outcomes. Gala? I asked. Jenna brought up the Whitaker Foundation guest list. 10 days out. Investors, city officials, press. They planned to crown Whitaker Square as Graham's legacy and slide Tyler into the spotlight. He wanted more than oxygen. Good. Crowns are heavy when the base is wrong. They've already touched your drawings, Jenna said. Eastern node replaced with a conventional frame. I put the model of the site on screen and layered the soil data over it. The bedrock on that side looks solid. It's not. It's glassy and mean. Conventional framing pushes a problem straight down until it snaps. The node moves the load sideways before the crack can travel. That's why it exists. I never submitted the compensation file, I said. Only the render and the math. The part that matters lives here. I tapped my temple, not the server. Insurance is a kind of mercy. The video wall shifted to an alert. A secure call, military origin. I accepted. General Everett Monroe appeared in a frame that made the bunker feel smaller. Your father's archive is unsealed, he said. Everything Whitaker Sr. did to box Richard Calder out. Names, dates, the memos your father could never use. My throat stayed even. And the other matter? The trust triggers on identity confirmation. 58 million, plus accrued. Your father planned for a day like this. He thought you'd spend it building. I said. The call ended the way those calls always do, cleanly, without ceremony. Jenna watched my face the way engineers watch a gauge. We're not going to let them break ground, she said. No, I said. We're going to save the city from their shortcuts, then take the name off the skyline. Nova Arc development filled the center screen, pale lines becoming a list of sites, timelines, budgets that could stand wind and rumor both. I added a new file, Nova 1, Whitaker Tower reinforcement. Not a revenge project. A correction. Up on street level, life went on. Down here, time bent to a plan. I walked the perimeter once more, palm on the wall where conduit hid in clean runs. This room was a truth machine. Feed it patience, and it returned leverage you could spend without raising your voice. I shut down non-essentials. The map of the city kept its glow. I pictured Graham tapping his desk, Tyler practicing a smile, Lauren checking a mirror that didn't tell her anything useful. I gave them nothing. Silence is a pressure test. When silence ends, it should end on your terms. I disappeared on purpose. No messages. No appeals. No angry midnight speeches. I let quiet do the work. Silence is a pressure test. It finds the weak seem faster than rage. Day 1, nothing moved on the surface. Day 2, Lauren called me twice and hung up before the tone. Day 3, Graham started dialing too. By day 7, the counter on my wall read 108 calls between them. I answered none. Absence is also a message. They tried the script people always try. Lauren drove to the shelter from her brochure. Staff remembered the pamphlet, not my face. Graham reached for old military contacts. The numbers still worked, but they led nowhere he could use. I had closed those doors years ago. The package landed at Whitaker Urban Group on the morning of day 8. Brown paper, clean tape, no return. Tyler opened it in Graham's office because he liked being in rooms when secrets broke. Inside lay my dog tags and the ID I hadn't used in a long time. The name was simple, Blake Ethan Calder. Tyler read it twice. He blinked the way men blink when the floor changes under a foot they trusted. Calder, he said. As in. Graham took the badge and went pale. He knew the other half of the sentence. Richard Calder had taught the military how to break structures without touching them. He taught me how to build things that wouldn't break back. The panic showed up the same afternoon, measured in meeting requests and sudden audits. Graham ordered structural reviews of anything I'd touched in 14 years. He called it diligence. It was fear hunting a place to sit. I let the day run before I moved. Nova Arc Development announced our first project at dusk. The render went live without commentary, a clean skyline mark with my signature folded into the lines. I didn't sell ambition. I sold correction. Within hours, 3 investors called WUG to freeze their Whitaker Square commitments and asked for time with us instead. Jenna forwarded the notices and the calendar requests. Pattern, then wait. Graham's phone finally reached mine close to midnight. I let it ring once before I took the call. He said my name like it was a thing he had invented. Hello, Graham, I said. We have unfinished business. You're making claims about my project, he said. You know that's actionable. You're planning to build Whitaker Square with a conventional frame on the east side, I said. That's not actionable. That's suicidal. He exhaled like the line had a taste he didn't like. We can fix your concerns. Not without my modifications, I said. They were never in the official set. The compensation file was never filed. It lives with me. Name your price. My price is out of your range, I said. You fired me for performance. That mistake just got expensive. He shifted to anger because pride hates a bill. I didn't follow him there. This isn't a threat, I said. It's a warning. Do not break ground with Tyler's edits. The East bedrock looks honest and isn't. Traditional framing drives load where the ground behaves like glass. You won't see failure until it's hungry. He tried the last argument men like him always try. You'll go down with us. Your name is on our buildings. My designs are archived with change orders that carry your signatures, I said. I sent copies to the city already. I also built a plan to reinforce anything that needs it. We'll do the work whether you cooperate or not. He went quiet. The line carried office air and expensive wood. Who are you? He asked. I told you for 14 years, I said. You just didn't listen. I ended the call and watched the city map resize itself around the day's new data. Investors shifted. Reporters knocked at doors. Engineers circled dates on calendars. Tyler sent 3 messages to suppliers in a row that contradicted each other. Fear turns smart men into noise. Jenna slid a note onto my desk without speaking. New meetings confirmed. Celeste Ward requested dinner within 48 hours. Good. You don't change a skyline alone. I pulled up the Whitaker Square simulation and moved the slider in small steps. The east side lit red under legacy framing and stayed calm under the node. The difference in the room felt like taking your finger off a bruise. That's what integrity buys. Not perfection. Margin. I shut the panel and checked the clock. Silence had done its work. Now the city would hear a new voice say a thing Graham never liked to say out loud. We were wrong, and someone else has the fix. I didn't celebrate. I measured again, then set tomorrow's sequence in order. People see announcements and think that's the move. The real move was the week before, when nothing happened and everything changed. Celeste Ward picked a room with no music. She wanted proof. Money hates guessing. I gave her proof, 7 WG properties with public files that looked clean and a shadow stack that didn't. Change orders, supplier swaps, test reports that failed to match the pour. No speeches, just bolts that lined up. Imminent, she asked. Not yet, I said. Unpredictable. That's worse. Can you fix them? Yes. Reinforce first, then build. Nova Arc isn't demolition. It's correction. She held my stare, measuring for delusion. I'll back Nova Arc, she said. But I need a public act that proves this isn't posture. You'll have rescue, I said. In daylight. When I reached the car, Jenna's message waited. Lauren wanted a meeting. I chose the Langford, the same hotel where the story broke. Stories should circle their first crack. I took the penthouse and cleaned the floor plan like a map I'd drawn. The city sat below, orderly and small. Lauren arrived with careful calm. This isn't about us, I said. It's about the buildings. I slid a folder across glass. Whitaker Tower's main columns are weak. They pass under routine load, fail under shock. She read without arguing. Fear is loud enough. I filed a reinforcement program with the city, I said. Nova Arc will do it at cost, and in public, whether WG cooperates or not. You're helping us, she said. I'm helping the city. Shortcuts always send a bill. One condition, I added. Dissolve WG. Transfer assets to Nova Arc. Graham retires. He'll never sign. I know. That's not why you're here. What do you want from me? Honesty. In 48 hours this evidence goes public. If Graham acts, people are safer sooner. If he stalls, the city will act for him. She paused at the door. For what it's worth. You loved a quiet version of me, I said. He's retired. The elevator took her reflection down. On my screen, the live transcript showed her calling Graham before the doors opened. She told him the part that mattered and the parts that didn't. She told him to move now. Right on schedule. Jenna stepped from the adjoining room. No questions. She already knew he wouldn't surrender a name. He'll try to discredit the threat, I said. That buys us what we need, public cause. I sent a single line to Marco Hayes, Stage 3. Prepare the tower. He replied with a dot. We never needed more. Outside, trucks traced late routes. Windows blinked off in patterns. Systems breathe, so do plans. 48 hours can be long if you waste them. I wouldn't. The alarm began with dust, not sirens. A tremor ran through the boardroom ceiling at Whitaker Tower while Graham rehearsed denial for his directors. Tiles shed a fine gray, and the building spoke the way tired structures do. Quiet first, then clear. The system voice cut in. Structural integrity alert. Please evacuate. Chairs scraped. Lawyers gathered papers like talismans. Outside the glass, you could see people already moving to the stairs. Graham called me as he walked, breath hard in the phone. What did you do? I let my monitor talk, I said. The one I installed 3 years ago when you refused to pay for it. Data streamed on my screen. Stress curves on the eastern columns. Spikes where the substandard pour hid under good paperwork. This is illegal, he said. This is prevention, I said. The feed is mirrored to the Department of Building Safety. Engineers are en route. Leave the building. The floor shuddered again. Long, low mean. Not an earthquake, I said. Material fatigue. Your substitutions are failing under normal load. He tried for the old leverage. You'll go down with us. Your name. My archive includes your change orders, I said. Signed. Timestamped. I designed reinforcement. Nova Arc will execute it whether you cooperate or not. I ended the call and watched the evacuation from my bunker wall. Streams of people, good lines, calm stairwells. The way it should look when pride gets out of the way. By noon, the city posted emergency inspection orders for all WG properties. News choppers circled. Commentators practiced outrage. Jenna muted the audio and read the numbers that mattered. Market open, WG down 52, she said. Nova Arc up 31 after we announced the reinforcement program. Good, I said. Book cruise. Daylight work. No branding stunts. Marco checked in from the perimeter. Engineers on site. We're holding press at a distance. No heroics. Perfect, I said. Let the building speak. On another screen, the back office lit up with transactions. 4 WG subsidiaries initiated rapid transfers, shells feeding shells until the trail bent toward one signature. Tyler, Jenna said. Predictable, I said. He'll try to salvage in the dark. Outside, sirens braided through afternoon traffic. Inside, the stress curves eased as the load dropped with the evacuation. Proof in motion. Rescue in public. I shut 2 panels and left one open, the ledger where Tyler had started his dance. Midnight would be soon enough. I waited in Tyler's chair at midnight. His office smelled like new leather and last chances. He flicked on the light and froze. Call it breaking and entering if you want. It isn't when you wrote the access control. On his desk, I set a thin folder with teeth, wired diagrams, shell ladders, and the Cayman transfer he'd rushed after the evacuation. The screenshots weren't dramatic. They were fatal. I designed WG's finance stack 5 years ago. I built it to remember. He tried charm first, then outrage. I gave him the only speech of the night. The terms were simple. Every asset he'd just scraped from Whitaker's subsidiaries returns to its rightful owner, Nova Arc. He resigns from WG and the industry. He never contacts Lauren again. In exchange, the copies go nowhere. Otherwise, the SEC gets them at 9 a.m. with a clean bow of embezzlement, securities fraud, and conspiracy. He called me insane. He called his lawyer. He called the bluff he wanted to see. I left the folder where it could breathe and let him read the timestamps again. Evidence has a tone. It makes men quieter than fear does. Across town, Jenna knocked on Lauren's door. She handed over a second folder, divorce papers with generous terms. The house, financial security, a clean exit. 24 hours to sign. No alternate offer. Jenna wanted me to give nothing. I chose the settlement anyway. Not for who Lauren was now, but for the person I thought I married. Back in Tyler's office, the night turned thin and sharp. He poured bourbon with a shaking hand and stared at the offshore confirmation like it could blink. I told him the truth in one line. You're not my enemy, Tyler. You're the last unsecured joint. He understood. Joints fail under mixed stress. I left before 2. The city smelled like wet metal. In the bunker, I watched the ledger twitch, then rebalance. At 6:12 a.m., his signature landed. Transfers reversed. Assets to Nova Arc. Resignation submitted. A final note followed at 6:19. I'm gone. Good. Flights leave every hour for men who run out of rooms. Sun bled into the edges of the grid. Jenna texted a dot, acknowledged. Marco rolled crews and comms for the next phase. Evidence would keep doing the talking. By noon, Graham would face cameras. Before that, I had one more quiet order to place for a man I was ending. By noon, he stood under lights and swallowed the name. Graham faced a wall of cameras, read from a page he hadn't written, and did the only clean thing left. Effective immediately, I'm retiring and dissolving Whitaker Urban Group, he said. All active projects and properties transferred to Nova Arc Development for assessment and reinforcement. I will cooperate fully with investigations. Reporters shouted. He stepped back, older by 10 years and 1 minute. Behind him, counsel looked relieved to have a script. Outside the frame, the city exhaled. In the bunker, we kept the sound muted and watched the numbers. Orders from the Department of Building Safety propagated across the grid. Our crews moved like chess. No sirens, no heroics, hard hats and checklists in daylight. Public schedule posted, Jenna said. No branding, just work logs. Good, I said. Rebar first, then rhetoric. Marco sent photos from the Whitaker Tower perimeter, barriers, engineers, a chalkboard that read Nova Arc. Reinforcement Phase 1. Proof you can see beats speeches you can't. I placed one more order that wouldn't make a press release. 2 teams to Graham's house. Discreet rotation, no badges. Not mercy time. He needed to live long enough to watch the correction take. That was the point. Jenna slid a sign page to my desk. Lauren's courier had already come and gone. No contest, no edits. The settlement would keep her standing, but nowhere near my work. She'd try to call again. The answer would stay the same. At 6:12 a.m., Tyler had given up his spoils. By afternoon, he'd cleared his office and the city. He'd spend years chasing a door that wouldn't open. Ambition without ballast tips fast. We locked the schedule for Nova 1. What Whitaker Tower would be when it could carry its own name. Night cruise staged materials. Day cruise mapped columns. I approved a line I liked seeing in print. Reinforcement before renovation. People before polish. The skyline looked different even before steel moved. Not taller. Truer. 7 months later, we opened the doors under a new name. Nova 1 carried new steel, new routes, and a museum on the top floor that told the whole story without shouting. Decisions, shortcuts, consequences, displayed under calm light. Education, not spectacle. General Everett Monroe arrived first. He took in the span of glass and the quiet weight of the exhibits. Your father would approve, he said. Not of the hurt, of the rebuild. I nodded. Revenge doesn't hold a load. Correction does. Crowds move through the lower levels. Tenants, students, a clinic, a library nook where the corner office used to be. Beauty wasn't the point anymore. Use was. You could feel it in the way the building breathed. Jenna signaled that Graham had reached the private elevator. I watched the doors part and saw how crisis had carved him down. I led him through the museum, past the change orders with his signatures, past the samples that failed lab strength by a margin you can't argue with. This is humiliation, he said. No, I said. It's instruction. So the next engineer says no before a stamp. We stood at the window where his boardroom used to be. The city looked clean, not because it forgot, but because it learned. He asked when I knew who he was. Late, I said, but in time. He looked at my hand when I offered it, then shook it once. Respect can be brief and still be real. Security pinged my wrist. Tyler had tried to enter with a counterfeit pass. I walked to the lobby. He looked thinner, edges frayed. Congratulations, he said. Professional courtesy. Your access is revoked everywhere we build, I said. Go. They escorted him out without theater. Celeste Ward joined me by the central model and traced the new skyline with one finger. Without compromise, she said. That was the work. Back upstairs, the gallery lights dimmed for evening hours. I stood alone with the model of Nova Ark's next sites. The phone buzzed. Jenna's note. Lauren attempted contact again. 3rd time this month. I sent the last reply I'll ever send on that subject. No response necessary. From this window, the logo cast a soft glow across the street. Shadows stretched where the city used to look away. Buildings outlast their makers. If you design them right, they outlast the lies too.